Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Wilson, the founder and host of People in Fundraising, a professional conversation series with friends and coworkers who work in the nonprofit industry. And this morning, I am very excited to welcome my former Harvard Business School coworker, Marla Habert, to our program. Marla is currently the Managing Senior Director of Philanthropy at Fray-dert Hospital and the Medical College of Wisconsin, and that is based in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. And one reason why I'm excited to have Marla on today's program is getting a sense from her, in her own words, of both her overall career perspective to date, but also the experience she had working in healthcare and higher education in the greater Boston area for several years, and then returning to her roots in the Wisconsin area, Milwaukee, as she calls it, small Milwaukee, which I just heard about, and I like that phrase. What that's been like for her in terms of, personally returning to where she's from, but relative to this conversation more, how she has benefited from having that familiarity with Milwaukee, with Wisconsin, and the communities there in terms of her success as a frontline fundraiser, with knowing issues and concerns in the community. And she's very active on LinkedIn, and that's another reason why I liked having her today, is she posts quite a bit, or she shares posts of various Milwaukee civic and sports updates, and then she's following those on LinkedIn. And so I think that's very exciting, and it shows the investment that Marla is putting into highlighting what's happening on the ground in Milwaukee, and how those ties and that familiarity have helped her in terms of engaging with donors and building communities. So with that, Marla, welcome to the program today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Very pleased to be a part of this and to celebrate, the important work we do in philanthropy and share that broadly. So appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. So one thing I failed to mention at the very beginning is that in addition to us working together, we actually left Harvard Business School 4 years ago, we think on the exact same day. I know my last day was Friday the 13th. How ominous is that? Marla's going away party was, I think, the Wednesday. Mine was the Thursday. And so that's just a funny, funny part of our careers.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's rewind from that kind of mutual departure date, and if you could share, Marla, how you got to where you are today, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people say that they kind of fell into philanthropy. They were doing something that, somehow they ended up in fundraising. They were planning events or whatever. I very intentionally got into development. I had a mentor who was at an relatively early age, maybe I was in high school, had said, you should explore this area. Oh. And development meant nothing to me at that point. I was like, okay, sure. I'll explore that area. And, like any college student, over summers and holiday breaks, I was looking for employment opportunities, ended up really identifying internship opportunities focused in development shops. So worked at a small women's agency, worked at our local art museum, and saw sort of the back end side, right? The administrative internship side of these institutions.
Yeah.
So I was finishing up college and was in a grant writing internship, essentially. And I have a degree in English, always enjoyed writing. Felt kind of confined by grant writing, but either way, got value out of it. And moved into a administrative role in development and saw sort of, again, the back end side and felt confined and thought, okay, like what is the front side of this, right? My goal as a young professional was I want to lead an organization that is meaningful to me. What that means at that point, I didn't really know what that meant. I did know, however, that every leader needs to know how to sell or fundraise, right? It's a big part of the job. So I left Milwaukee 12, 13 years ago and went out to Boston. At that time, I was looking for a community that had many professional opportunities in development. There's no better place than Boston.
Yeah. Several
incredible healthcare institutions, several incredible higher ed institutions. So I felt, like this is the place to go. And ended up at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Really went through, I would say, a grind there. Big shop, 150 people, very robust individual, major, principal, and transformational gift programs, a healthcare philanthropy grateful patient program that was 100 years old, and really just went through the grind in a really hard, but obviously fruitful way. And, again, in moving to Boston, I was like, I'm going to work in higher ed and I'm going to work in healthcare. And this, when you have, options of BU, MIT, and Harvard, you're starting off in a good place. And so was thrilled to accept a position at Harvard Business School. And I give a lot of credit to HBS because it is this unique unicorn of a place. And I have such enthusiasm and passion for the mission. And you can see the alumni base does as well. And as a frontline fundraiser, you have the ability to play. You have the ability to explore. It is such a unique constituency that you frankly have to play and explore. You have to go out there and meet anyone and everyone because their leadership spans every industry. And so anyways, point being is that I created so much activity, just frontline fundraising activity. And I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned about how to drive this work certainly at a C-suite level, right?
Sure.
And so my family drew me and my family back to Wisconsin.
Okay.
And in 2018, in April of 2018, maybe, we departed, and I landed at Fray-dert in the medical college, the only academic medical center here. Okay. So I went from Boston, where there's 7, to Milwaukee, where there's 1, and thought this should be easy. There's 1, and the value is so significant in academic medicine. And so I've been here for 4 years. I started in a major gift role focused on cancer and moved into a principal gift role focused on team management now. Okay. I oversee 5 FTEs that are focused on major gifts and hold a portfolio myself.
Dynamite.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. I'm very impressed with certainly your career in general. You're very deliberate from a young age, and having a mentor when you were still in high school, kind of identifying skills, personality in you that they saw would be a good fit in the nonprofit sector. And Another thing I really liked that you shared very briefly was you had this, I don't know if you call it a mission statement or like, an internal compass that was, as you were leaving Wisconsin, you were very particular about, I want to get into both healthcare and higher education fundraising. But it was even just like a mission statement that you mentioned as you were talking about that, is that you wanted, I believe it was to, be a leader in philanthropy. And, I think that's really admirable. And in my experience, that's unique, where you have several of those ingredients, at still a relatively young age, but then the mentor, and then having the foresight, the foresight of what you really want to do. But you also put in your time with grant writing and had exposure to the non-frontline world. So that's really terrific, and that's exciting. I'm glad you shared that.
Thank you. I don't know. I feel like there's a balance for, like, the best word I can come up with is grind. Like, there's a true grind, or like almost grunt work mentality with fundraising at some point, right? Because you have to get through names, you have to secure funding, you've got, finite campaign, et cetera. And I think that, like, that grunt work of being embedded in like large institutions and small institutions, right? It's different kind of grunt work.
Yeah.
That's the foundation for everything. Like, that's what when I think about, okay, how am I going to, I've got a teammate who's, displeased with their portfolio. How do I have them see the value of digging in and getting creative with qualification efforts?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you've phoned them 3 times. Excellent. Like, how have you leveraged your network or the network of others to get at them from a different perspective? Right.
Yeah.
So, I think where I like that grunt work, that grind, in a way has sort of informed the creative side of philanthropy for me. And now that's obviously my responsibility as a leader.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that, where you mentioned you're managing a team of frontline fundraisers that have their own portfolios, and you do as well. What do you take from your early career experience in terms of building up their own skill set that you think is most helpful for the people you manage?
Sure. So there is, like, I feel like I strike a balance between being process and practice driven, and then just like the natural gut instinct. And that, you can use data to inform who you need to meet with and how you need to prioritize your time and what are the words that you need to say, right? There's best practices in this industry that are long established, right?
Yeah.
However, you can also be in a meeting with someone who fits all of those, we can check all those boxes, and is giving you the feeling that you will offend them if you encourage them to make a gift, right? Or now is not the right time, and this is why. And so for me, we're a small and mighty team. We're 40, maybe 38, or hiring right now aggressively.
Good.
And a big part of like my philosophy with my team is, now is the time to be creative. Now is the time to, I will help put in place the practices, the processes, the infrastructure, so that you can focus your time on teasing out that gut instinct and like reflecting on a meeting and saying, okay, like, how could I have done this differently to motivate them in a different way? Or, what did I really learn about this person and what excites them? What are the indicators what are the motivators that encourage them to give or not give? And so that's, I envy the shops of 150 people. And one day we'll get there.
Absolutely. And if you could, I know this is kind of immediate follow-up, but if you could just share with our audience what that has been like for you to go from large healthcare and higher ed shops to now, a small, medium-sized institution with aspirations to grow.
Sure. It was hard, no doubt, really difficult. I was really, the benefit of being in a big institution is, the way to do the work is established. You do the work, right? Here's the playbook, just follow it. The benefit of being in a small shop is you get to build a playbook. Right?
Yes.
And so the attraction for me was, I want to build the playbook. Like, I've learned from massively respected institutions in general, and then specifically in philanthropy, I can cite so many like colleagues and leaders that I still have in the back of my mind in my day-to-day work. But, if not, to me, it's just so meaningful to bring that to a team that, frankly, 4 years ago was fundraising through sponsored events.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So hard, shocking, but also, really fun, right? There's like that building creates ownership for me and creates ownership for my team, and allows, people who, to your point, like, I'm relatively young in my career, right? And I've had opportunity that is unmatched, right? I've learned more in, my own personal and professional development in the past 4 years than I would have expected to. And I credit that to a small shop and having the flexibility to, not the flexibility, I guess, the accessibility to do things I might not otherwise do in a big shop.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you for sharing that. I think, having a diverse experience, large shop, small shop, higher education, healthcare, you're now leading teams. That's really cool. And I've, been a little aware of it just from LinkedIn. As I've said to other people I've interviewed, hopefully not, it comes across as lurking, but like, following people from LinkedIn, what's happening with them. And, I'm just very happy for you that you are where you are now.
Thank you.
And having, as you mentioned, the accessibility to take what you've learned elsewhere, but also build it yourself. And I can imagine that's got to be energizing, challenging.
But absolutely, when I shared, we're like actively recruiting, and one of there's two key questions that we ask, or two key things we try to get at with anyone. And we're talking about development officers. We're talking about just like 75% of their time should be fundraising. One of the most important questions, though, is around entrepreneurialism. So like, you see a gap, how are you taking steps to address that gap? That might not be you doing the work. So, you've got a gap maybe with a leader, a dean, a president, whatever. How are you taking it upon yourself? And if you're ideating around it, if you're spinning your wheels around it, like, turn it into something productive, bring it to your manager and solve the problem, right? And that you can do at any level, you can do that in any institution, but the red tape to get to that is less at a smaller institution. That's how I've seen it, right? Or I think the wins can be even bigger. So it's definitely not for everyone. I've had some people come in and say, I need to be in my lane and stay in my lane. But if you're someone who's looking for true diversification in your day-to-day, that's, that I think this environment provides that.
That's so cool. Yeah, really neat.
Cool.
I've got a follow-up question, and so it may be a slight pivot for you, but
sure.
With the experience, the diversity of experience you've had, and now leading a team of frontline fundraisers, without going into any specifics,
sure,
but is there a moment in your career that was a hard lesson to learn, or that you wish you could have a do-over on?
So many moments, so many. It's a really good question because I feel like an important part of this role is reflection, right? Because there's so many nuanced moments, be it with individual team members, be it with external benefactors. And so I will share one, I'll share two. One is with a benefactor. He is an emeritus board of trustee member, had just sold his company, was, cash positive, and we were wrapping up our first comprehensive campaign.
Oh, okay.
This is at my current institution in my previous role as major gift officer. And my plan all along was I had built a nice relationship to solicit him for a 6-figure gift. I had the data to support that. He had a close familial connection to the hospital, and he had a really good experience. Nice. And I got distracted by the fact that he sold his company and was cash positive. And I thought, and timing was such that a campaign was wrapping up. It was like, there's 3 months left. There's 2 months left. There's 1 month left. And I felt the other actually complementing factor is I had just had a new boss start.
Oh, okay.
And I was without a doubt, I was trying to impress him, of course. And
sure.
Now I'm obviously hitting myself for this because, but I solicited him far beyond what I should have. The ask amount was in the 7 figures, and it was for my own purposes, right? And I was not putting, his name is Mike. I was not putting Mike at the center of that strategy. I was at the center of that. The institution was at the center of that. His recent increased capacity was at the center of that.
Sure.
So all is not lost. He made a lovely 6-figure gift.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Far below what I'd hoped for, but it's just one of those moments where I was like, I knew what was right for him, and I went against that. And the reasons I went against that were very obvious, right? And it didn't dampen his, not that I know of, I don't think it dampened his relationship with us, but he also, it was a moment where I had built this true relationship, and I used a transactional approach at the end. I said, great, you've got money, you should be making a 7-figure gift. When in reality, he's got money and he has no idea what to do with that money. He's trying to figure out his stuff, right?
Sure.
So that's one sort of external benefactor example. Another is internally, I'm working with, it's really focused on sort of culture, right? So culture is a big part of why I've ever stayed at an institution or left an institution or missed an institution. And culture's formed by the people. And I put a premium on it as a leader. But it's evolved for me in just the time that I've been managing this team. So where I misstepped was, we had sort of a organizational structure, not really a reorg, but just a slight restructure. Okay. And thinking back to those moments, when I was in previous institutions and when there was a restructure, what would I have liked to feel a little bit better about that moment? A little heads up, like a meeting instead of an email, right? Like just little things to make you feel like a valued participant.
Absolutely.
Right. Rather than just being informed. And so there's a scenario where, it was an email and it was the moment before things had happened. And it felt last minute because it was last minute.
Yeah.
Right? It was an afterthought. So
sure. That's suspect.
Yeah, totally. So would have done it differently. Not, again, none of this I feel is like insurmountable. It's not like we can't change that, but culture, I think, is just much more delicate than we give it credit for. Right. And enough of those little moments turn into a different culture. So,
totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So as I said, like, as we grow, I feel like we have to be even more focused on that because things happen so quickly and you're taking on new things and you're taking on new people. And I can't let it get away from you.
Yeah, that's well said. And I would imagine, particularly in, a slightly smaller general market, you mentioned there, this one healthcare institution in Milwaukee, not as robust of a higher education presence.
Right.
So word travels fast, I would imagine, about, nonprofit culture in that environment.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point earlier about Milwaukee, like that is a term that everyone in this town knows. Everyone in this town uses it because you'll be out with someone for coffee and you'll say, oh, I met Tim, I just met with Tim Wilson about blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, oh, you know Tim? How do you know Tim? Oh, I'm on this board. I'm on that board. Right. It's this hidden gem in the Midwest, and it's becoming less hidden, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But it's small. And so because of that, I don't want to say there's more like critique or there are more eyes on you, but there's you just have to be careful with every step you take. And I think that what I love about being back here is that this community it's not unlike what it was 15 years ago. It is, I feel like I and my team gets to be a part of sort of elevating the way that philanthropists think about philanthropy here.
So cool.
And really, treating them as strategic partners and invested partners who are expecting an ROI versus a bank, essentially. But, that I feel like the only reason I can do that is because I know and understand what this community has been, and I definitely know where it can go.
Yeah.
So
that's gotta be exciting.
It's so fun because it's, it might not be bold for other communities, but it's bold for this community, right?
Yeah.
It's again, 4 years ago, we were soliciting people for $10,000, table sponsorships. And I walked in and I was like, it was hard and I was shocked. I was like, what am I doing here? Right? Like, this is not the environment for me. And like I said, everyone has the ability to be a leader. And so coming in, operating as I always have, just getting into the relationship building and trying to like kind of understand how the community has changed over the past 15 years. It shows in your work, it shows in how you partner and how you sort of engage your portfolio, your network, et cetera. And we are in a wildly different place in 4 years. We're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but progress has been significant for sure.
That's great. That's really good. Marla, if you could just talk a little bit about your responsibility at Fray-dert, because there is the Fray-dert, the hospital. There's also the affiliated medical college of Wisconsin. And I have another question once you get through that.
Sure.
So if you want to answer that first, that would be.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
So I am managing senior director of development. I oversee planned giving corporate and foundation giving, and alumni giving.
Okay.
Fray-dert, and then as well, I hold a principal gift portfolio.
Mhm.
Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin is a academic medical center that's affiliated with MCW, who educates and trains physicians, right?
Okay.
And in the same way that the Brigham is connected to Harvard Medical School. And Froedtert is the clinical environment. So it's the Brigham in this case. So I've got, my responsibilities are really outside of that, outside of program or outside of people management, team management, are to that master or that massive asterisk is at the bottom of other duties as assigned is to continue to elevate the sophistication we have in philanthropy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned at Brigham there was a Grateful Patient program that had been around for a century. Is there a Grateful Patient program at Fray-dert?
If I'm to be really critical, I'd say no. If I'm to be really liberal, I'd say absolutely there is. So what I see as a Grateful Patient program is it's embedded in the culture of the institution. So everyone from president to nurse to, provider to administration understands it, is embodying that work and then sharing it. I would say no. We are in the infant stages of that. We have support from our leaders. We have physician champions that are certainly champions. And frankly, they've come from other institutions. Who have seen, we've got to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
And we, as a department, have invested in 2 FTEs to advance that program. So,
great.
Yeah, we're in maybe a little over year 1. And we've had start and stops in the past, but now's the right time for us. We have the staff and we have sort of the depth and capacity to not just say we're going to do it, but say we're going to do it and then deliver on it.
That's great.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And as you mentioned earlier, the development team expanding. I just want to ask a related question.
Sure.
So is Fray-dert one hospital, or is it part of a system network? Or
it's one. It's part of a network.
Okay.
It's under the Fray-dert Health network, essentially, and Fray-dert Hospital is the main hospital, which is where all specialty care is had. So that's primarily where we focus. There are 2 other hospitals, community hospitals, as a part of the network that have foundations. And so, in a dream world, we're all one, and we are, completely donor centered, because I know that my prospects go from hospital to hospital. But for the moment, we're focused on the main hospital and then the medical college. And the interesting piece about the medical college is that there's a definitive agreement between the 2 institutions, and and the complicating factor, in a good way, honestly, is we've got 4 institutional leaders. I have 2 presidents. I have 3 presidents, actually, and then I have a dean. So
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good and challenging for sure.
Sure. And my last position was at a healthcare organization here in Utah.
Yeah.
And I think Salt Lake and Milwaukee, I think they have a similar population size, among the top 1 or 2 largest cities in their respective states.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering if the experience I'll outline very quickly in Utah has resonance with Fray-dert.
Sure.
So Intermountain Healthcare, my last employer, I have great things to say about my time there.
Yeah.
They were constrained by the state in terms of any more acquisitions or mergers within Utah, within the Intermountain West even. So recently they have entered some partnerships with Midwest and Rocky Mountain states healthcare facilities. Is there a similar
There's definitely not constraints. I mean, we just acquired another, I guess it was almost a year ago now, we acquired a hospital that's probably like 2 hours outside of Milwaukee. We're otherwise pretty like greater Milwaukee area focused, but it's interesting because it just gets into more of our rural area, and there's really not, that's just historically, that's not where our presence has been. The region is interesting because the UW health system, aligned with the University of Wisconsin in Madison, is an hour and a half away. Their strength is their clinical strength their clinical environment doesn't really compare to ours. However, their research is incredibly robust. It's it's an old, really successful institution. Outside of that, you're looking south at Chicago, and there's a number of different institutions there. But and then as well north, you've got Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. That's like 5-6 hours away. So what's interesting though is like you've got a mid-sized metropolitan area here, and there's a need. Right? There is a need for academic medicine in this environment, and we're the only player. So again, like when I first came, I was like, Jesus, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's obvious. Like, if you're going to give to healthcare, you're going to give here, because why would you give anywhere else? The really interesting part is that what I did not account for is there's very few, I think it's changing, but the entire community doesn't understand the value of academic medicine. They know that if I've got something serious going on, that you go to Fray-dert, but they don't like frequently. It's, oh no, I get my care at, the just local doc. Right. Right. So, there's an education piece around what is academic medicine? What is the relationship between these two institutions? And why is that so valuable from a patient care perspective? Which, like, again, I would never have that conversation in Boston. Right. Because it's just known.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And just as a last question here, and Marla, you've been so generous with your time and your insights. And
always.
I'm just excited to see how your career progresses. I think a lot of people that work in healthcare philanthropy find it inspiring for various reasons. I think some people feel there's more of a direct impact on the work they do, whatever their role is. So my last question for you is, who inspires you the most, and why do they inspire you?
Okay, so that's changed. It's changed over the years, right? I like when I think about people professionally, someone we both know, Ms. Janet Cahill.
Absolutely.
Really smart, strategic, thoughtful, kind, made tough decisions, and just has a standard of excellence. And that inspired me professionally, right? Like, I wanted to be around that. So as I've sort of evolved in my career and I'm more externally, like really externally facing, now there's this one prospect, there's one donor, and they're sort of leading the charge. And we as the donor community, we as the philanthropic community, have a responsibility to address, in Milwaukee, there's like a massive health equity issue. And we have a responsibility to help fix that. And like that, like, to me, that's bold. That's inspirational. Like, that's exciting. That is it's honest. And I think that inspiration now for me comes from the honesty of, we haven't, the problem isn't solved. It's
Sure.
been, we've tried many different attempts to solve the problem. We haven't, and the right people aren't in it, or, there's, COVID has only exacerbated it.
Yeah.
But if no one's going to fix it, then I'm going to fix it, or I'm going to be a catalyst to fix it. So
yeah,
to
dynamite.
me, it's like taking philanthropy and seeing philanthropists play a different role. I love it. It's like, it's the table sponsorship. Like that's there's nothing worse than that, right? It's using philanthropy, using your influence, using your network, and then kind of holding us as the development shop and the institutions themselves accountable to that. So I again, this person is challenging of our institution, and like, I love it because it only makes us better. It only makes us, think deeper and obviously come at it from a different perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes, the institution needs nudges, influences
to be
from
pushed
outside. Yeah, totally.
Well, and I mean, it's so funny because I'm an English major. Like, I'm a writer.
Right.
Like, I'm not a doctor. I hated math and I hated science. I was never good at either. I always struggled. And so, sometimes you're seeing these, especially in academia, it's like, it's all, I don't know, you can get stuck without someone pushing. Right.
Yes.
And so
yeah,
when I see a donor or the philanthropic community push, I'm quietly in the background, like rooting them on. Go.
That's awesome. And that's a great way to wrap up our conversation today. So Marla, thank you so much. I've just been very grateful and excited to hear what you've had to share with us today, and just wonderful to reconnect with you, and for me to cheer you on. You mentioned you're cheering on the institution and the person who's compelling you to aim higher as an institution and set the sights higher, and the impact can be greater, deeper, more long lasting, and so forth. So yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Tim.
you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your insights today and wish you the best.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Take care.
So as a reminder to our audience, you can find Marla Habert's conversation today on our website, peopleinfundraising.com, as well as the other conversations in this professional nonprofit series. And thank you for listening today, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.